6 years ago, I reviewed this game, and to this day, I still consider it the worst video I've ever made. I articulated my points so poorly, and it still haunts me. That video is the reason I started writing scripts for my content instead of talking off the top of my head. And after all these years, I finally replayed Red Dead Redemption 2, and I went on my own redemption arc with this game, and my thoughts on this game changed completely because I went from hating it and telling people it's not that great due to how slow the pacing is, to now really enjoying it. The small details in this game are amazing if you pay attention. So I'm gonna right my wrongs and remake that video since I feel differently about the game, and I'm much better at making content. You know, this isn't a typical review, I just want to talk about Arthur because I think he's one of the best fictional characters I've played as, and he deserves his own video.
There ain't no shame in looking for a better world.
I missed you, Arthur.
Arthur Morgan is such a well-written character that I would put him on the same level as the characters from Cyberpunk 2077, which I consider to be one of the best games of all time, because the characters in that game don't feel like just video game characters that fit a typical archetype. They feel like real people, from the way they talk and interact with you and each other, how they react, and their personalities change over time or as a result of events in their lives, just like people do in real life. And Arthur is the same. You can read his thoughts in his journal. When you think you know how he'll react in a situation, he can surprise you. And through conversations, you get to know about his past, his ambitions, and his goal in life, and even that goal changes over the course of the game. He feels like a real person I got to know in the 100+ hours I spent on this playthrough. As interesting of a character as he is though, the first chapter and most of the second, you don't see much of that. It's a very slow opening, you're just a lackey basically. You're the muscle, you're threatening and you're scary, you're the enforcer for the gang, and Dutch's right-hand man. This is all you are for like the first 6 hours of the game, until you meet Mary.
Mary?
We see a completely different side of Arthur. He's nervous and pacing. We learned he even wanted to marry her, and despite how things ended between them, you can clearly tell he still has feelings for her after all this time. And here the game gives you your first decision to help rescue her brother or not. On my first playthrough, I selected no. In any game I play, if there's an option to be a hero or villain, I'll always choose the villain route. It's just more fun to not be restricted by any type of morals, and you can do what you want. But this time around, I was gonna accept every quest I denied in the first run and try to go for the hero ending. I'll be honest, it was kinda hard to not be a villain and rob, steal, or kill anyone that got in my way with the situations this game puts you in, but due to one too many NPCs just starting shit with me first, I decided to go back to being a villain because it's just easier, until chapter 3 happens. Reading that journal entry of him talking about his internal struggle with his morality between trying to be good and evil, and when he looks at Charles, being good and doing the right thing seems to come so naturally to him, changed something in me that's never happened before. When games let me make decisions, I normally choose based on what I would do if I was in that situation. And after reading about his conflict with his morality, it actually felt wrong to continue playing him the way that I was. And, you know, being a villain, knowing about his internal struggles with trying to be good. And for the first time ever in any game, I started to separate myself from the character. I was making decisions in game from that point based on what I think Arthur would do. Before, I said it was hard to be good, but, you know, after that point, it became easier to be a hero and a good guy because I know it's what he's trying to do. And after that moment for me, the game got weirdly relatable. Too relatable, actually. Because I myself struggled with the same thing for years. Now, I'm not saying I robbed banks and killed people like Arthur did, but 6 years ago when I was playing this game for the first time, I was not in a good place, and I wasn't a good person. That may sound surprising to the people who only know me in like the last 2 or 3 years, but yeah, I was not a good person then, and I was trying to change, and it was hard and confusing. And it's the same thing with Arthur, especially in those Strauss missions where he's reluctant to be a debt collector, but he just, you know, gets in his zone and threatens to kill people. And, you know, then he just feels bad after. And you might think, why does he still continue to kill, threaten, and rob people if he feels bad about it or reluctant to do it? Well, personally speaking, the truth is it's easy to be bad when that's all that you know. By far, the most interesting part of this game to me is watching the dynamic between Arthur, Dutch, and the NPCs in the world. Because that's where the change in Arthur starts to happen, but it's like on a small scale. From the moment the game stops holding your hand and lets you go into the world, that mission where you take the girls into Valentine, there's a guy whose horses escape, and if you choose to help him, he says, "Thanks, you're a good person." Arthur replies, "No, I'm not. I'm only helping to impress the ladies." And this happens so many times throughout the game. Arthur helps someone, he's told he's kind, he's a good person, they can tell he's good on the inside, and anything along those lines, and each time, Arthur denies it and gives an excuse as to why he helped them. This is where the game for me is most relatable. Watching Arthur's self-loathing and negative reinforcement every time someone tells him something positive about himself, that mindset and behavior is taught. You're not born to naturally think like that, but we know who raised Arthur. Dutch's influence on the gang is insane. His words has a chokehold on everyone. You know, he says, "We're bad men, but we're not as bad as everyone else. There's worse guys out there." You know, his motto of, "We save folks as need saving, feed them as need feeding, and kill them as need killing, but you do more killing than saving or feeding." And Dutch gives Arthur that positive reinforcement and calls him son whenever he does the stealing or threatening or killing. When you learn about Arthur's son and his son's mother who got robbed and killed in the past, his reasoning is good things don't happen to bad people. Arthur being told he's a good person more and more by other people in the world starts to clash with what he's been taught and constantly hearing from Dutch, and also what he himself believes. The hardest thing to come to terms with when you're trying to change for the better is honestly perception. Despite trying to be a better person for whatever you did in the past, you still believe you're a bad person, and you will for a long time. And you think other people will see you that way too. But the truth is, the way you perceive yourself is not how others perceive you. And it catches you off guard when someone tells you what they think about you, and if they speak highly of you or tell you that you're good or whatever the total opposite of what negative things you believe about yourself. And like Arthur does, you deny it or play it off because you don't feel like you deserve it or believe it to be true. It's an insanely hard pill to swallow that people don't see you the same way you see yourself. That cutscene with Arthur and the nun at the train station was amazing. I put my controller down after that cutscene and kind of just sat there for 5 minutes in silence. I wish somebody had that conversation with me years ago when I was going through the same moral dilemma and trying to change like Arthur is. To a degree, it felt like she was talking to me. I would have loved somebody having that conversation with me years ago. It would have made figuring out the process a lot easier. I believe that Arthur hearing that other people think he's good and kind when he believes he's not is making that internal morality struggle even harder because it's challenging his beliefs, which is a good thing. You know, that leads to change, but like I said, it's on a small scale, and the more he starts to change and be kinder, he's kind of slipping out of Dutch's grasp, which we can all see that Dutch has a problem with. On the larger scale, the big three events that get him to change and complete that redemption arc are his death and the recurring characters of Mary and Miss Downs. From chapter 1 to 5, Arthur doesn't agree with Dutch's decisions, but he goes along with them anyway out of loyalty. And when he finds out he's dying and doesn't have a lot of time left, that is a huge motivation for him to get the gang to safety and help them get out, which means he went from being complicit in Dutch's plans and always trusting him to upright saying what he wants and making demands and doing what he thinks is best. We met Mary 3 times, but each time we interact with her, Arthur changed between the time span of those missions. I think Mary serves as a reminder to Arthur of what he could have if he changed his lifestyle. And every time they meet, you can see it between them. There's this lingering and unspoken feelings of, I want you, but with our different lifestyles, it's not gonna work. I've seen a lot of forum posts and, videos saying she's just using him, and I believed that at first, which is why I said no to helping her the first time around. But from accepting all of her missions, by the last one, I felt differently. Their goodbyes always seem to be hard. She goes from, I'm not gonna ask you to change, I know you won't, to, I wish you would change, and in their last one, she flat out says, run away with me. So was she using him or did she actually love him? I think it's both. Two things can be true at once. I'm surprised people are so divided when it comes to Mary's feelings about Arthur, because there's a lot more nuance and complexity to their relationship than just, she loves him or not. Arthur knows why she's there. He says it when they're on the steps. He's the best guy she knows at being threatening. Is she wrong to ask him for help after what happened between them? Yes. And does she use that to get you to agree to help her? Also yes. She disagrees and judges his lifestyle, but then asks for that same service for her gain, and she's wrong for that. But at the same time, she also acknowledges she made poor life choices, and for all the judging and righteous living she does, she admits her life is still no better than his. And for that reason, she wishes she chose him, because she didn't, and she still isn't any happier, or her life isn't any better. I wish we got more missions and more about their backstory, because I love seeing this side of Arthur and his backstory. Plus, they're charming and their chemistry is good when they're together. I wasn't questioning if she loved him as the missions progressed, but the fact that she was still holding on to his ring after all those years kind of cemented it for me. In their final scene, I found the parallels kind of funny because the roles are now reversed. Arthur is telling Mary what's always being told to him. Arthur is always asking Dutch not to do something and just pick up everyone and leave, and what does Dutch always say? We can't leave, we need money first. Except Mary's smart enough to know that won't happen and walk away from Arthur when Arthur continues to believe Dutch. Arthur's response was, let me help the gang escape, get my share of the money, and we can disappear. This is the first time in like 30 or 40 hours you hear Arthur mention what he wants. It's not related to Dutch's plans or the gang, but he's talking about what he wants for his future. Like the gears in his head are turning. From the beginning of the game, it's been, we're outlaws, we're the last of our kind, we're probably gonna die doing this, to now he's thinking of his future and actually living. Now, Miss Downs, he runs into her a lot throughout the game, and she, I think, is a reminder of the consequences of his actions. I mean, the fact that he's dying is also a reminder, but Miss Downs is a physical representation of the consequences. And he can see how badly it affected someone else, because her and her son's life has been a downward spiral since he killed her husband. Every time you run into her, she avoids Arthur, and he just lets her go until chapter 6. That determination to change and right some of his wrongs, he goes after her, helps her son, gives them money in hopes that, they can have a better life. And he's doing it for himself, to know that when he dies, he left them in a better position to get a better life. Not because he wants to atone or trying to get redemption or forgiveness from her for what he did either. If you got the good ending, you'd think Arthur redeemed himself, obviously, but honestly, I think Arthur redeemed himself long before his death. For me, I think the moment you decide, hey, I want to change for the better, I don't want to be this person anymore, and I'm going to make sure I won't go back to being that person, and if your actions back up your words after that, I think you've achieved your redemption. Arthur going to help Mary and trying to be better, but also threatening to kill the guy telling him he couldn't stand in front of the door was funny, but it's also realistic. You'll fall back into old habits pretty easily. Changing yourself isn't some smooth and constant uphill progression. But I like how the game is attempting to show you that Arthur is a good person at his core, because the way some of these missions are laid out is kind of nudging you in the direction of being good. But when it comes down to a decision, it will still give the player the final choice in a lot of scenarios. You can still choose the bad option. The entire second half of Chapter 6, all of those missions are just Arthur attempting to right his wrongs. But at the end of the mission, you still have the final say on if he makes the good or bad choice. You can spend the entire game being bad and your honor bar can be in the far left. And in the last chapter, if you decide to make the good choices, the honor bar will move a lot more than it did before. And if you can get it halfway or slightly above, you can still get the good ending, signifying whatever you did before in the past, it's not too late for you to decide to change for the better. There's still redemption for you. It's the tiny details like this that is why I like this game. I got the bad ending the first time, but this time around, I'm much happier with the good ending. It's a more fitting end for Arthur, I think. I didn't care for him at all in my first run, but this time around, I'll admit I was a little bit sad when he ended up dying. The only thing I didn't like was how quickly they handed you off to John after Arthur's death, and there's barely any mention of him outside of a few lines in a mission, but other than that, amazing game. I fully understand why everyone gives this a 10 out of 10. I will say it's a shame they killed off support for Red Dead Online because the story in that is amazing too. So yeah, I definitely missed out on hands down one of the best games of the 2010s and one of the best characters. But yeah, I loved what I played here. I spent 4 months with this game, and Arthur's story is one I'll remember for a long time. Like I said at the beginning, I feel like I gone on my own redemption arc from hating this game to understanding it and liking it now, and I think I did a better job of covering this game than I did 6 years ago.